All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. For those who don't know me, my name is Nikki. I'm the Director of Training with PRPS. And helping me out today is BK. He is the Director of the PA Park Maintenance Institute. And this is the Summer Camp Roundtable. As always, the roundtables work best when you help us with discussion topics, because these were designed to help you with your questions, your concerns, and they're really just discussion platforms regarding the topic of the moment. So again, this is our summer camp topic. So I'm going to open the floor at this time and say, what do we want to talk about today? Feel free to unmute yourself or use the chat box. And we will, if I can get my chat box to work without being, there we go. And we're going to go ahead and get started. So if anyone has a question, and then BK and I will
Nikki, I'm sorry. I'm just going to jump in real quick. Our D3 training literally just ended, so you're probably going to get a bunch of people logging on in the next minute.
Perfect. Not a problem.
I'm not asking you to wait. I'm just saying you're going to get an influx of people probably.
No, Mike, you know what? I forgot about that. So thank you for reminding me. We are recording this, so we will obviously send the chat box to. So I'll go ahead and start with a question from the chat box, and then we can touch base with this again as more people drop in. We did have, again, a large sign up for today, about 94 people. So while we're going through this, the mask question is always a big one. So are masks required at your summer camp, and is it all the time or not at all? And again,
for anybody to answer?
Anybody, feel free to unmute yourself. You can put it in the chat box. We do send the chat box notes out to the group. So if we don't get a chance to read them all, you'll get to see that in the follow-up. But yeah, if you wear a mask or require...
Last summer, we only required a mask when they were in close contact, and we allowed them to take it off when they were playing athletics. Because the state and county mandate has changed, I believe it was in November, that now, like for youth sports and stuff, the athletes have to wear the masks. We will be requiring masks at all times at our camp this summer.
Okay, great.
And Mike, just to kind of jump on Derek raised the question, how are you communicating that to the people that are taking part? Are you putting that in your marketing? Is it something that you give like when they arrive, or how are you displaying that information?
So that's part of our registration information, our COVID protocols. It's part of our parent orientation, and then we've also purchased just the disposable, surgeon's masks that we keep on site. If a kid forgets a mask or loses a mask or breaks a mask, whatever, we just supply them with an extra one. So there's never a reason why they wouldn't have one.
We're requiring in our handbook under our protocols that every child bring 2 masks, clean masks to camp every day, as well as, we have some on hand too in case somebody forgets.
Great, thank you. How about others? Is anyone different, not requiring masks or being a little looser? Or how do you handle issues of parents who don't feel their children should wear masks?
You should take a de-escalation training and you could learn that.
Yeah, I'm not trying to be funny here, but if they don't want the kids to wear a mask, put in your marketing. If they don't want the kids to wear a mask, this isn't the right camp.
The only thing that we haven't run into, which I guess you have to consider, is if they have a medical reason not to wear a mask. And we fortunately did not run into that. And I mean, I guess at the end of the day, if they provide a doctor's note or something saying that they can't wear a mask, we would accept that. But I'm not accepting mom's word that, Billy has asthma and can't wear a mask. I need some kind of proof.
I agree with that.
Great.
Are we allowed to require that though by law when nobody else has to prove why they don't have to wear them?
Because everybody else has to wear them.
I don't think you can require ADA proof.
Right.
By law, if they say it, like at the pool last summer, we just had to honor it. If they said it, we had to just be like, okay. but not sure if there's any change.
Yeah,
on
I
that.
guess I'll take that up with my solicitor to get a firm answer on that, better than my legal background, but
You can tell them they need to wear a face mask then instead, or a shield.
shield. There you go.
Correct.
All right, so you're making an accommodation for them.
Correct.
Fantastic. Other
Did you have
thoughts?
to provide the shield for them? I guess you
No.
would.
No, why would you have to? Are you
Because
providing
it's a-
masks for everybody else?
Well, actually, yes, we are.
Yes.
We do
Well, then
provide them.
In that instance, then yes.
We
you
do
would.
provide them in case they forget them. There's whatever we have extras available.
So maybe just buy an X amount of the shields as well.
Yeah.
And if it were in my instance, I would say you get one shield and then that's
Correct.
it.
Yeah, you get
Right.
one, and if you lose it or break it or whatever, then you're responsible, or we charge you for your second one or something like that.
Because these kids are going to be told the same thing when they're back in school.
An important thing I remember dealing with the ADA when I was working facility side of things is reasonable accommodations. And so the biggest thing is having that notification period. You can even put that in language of X amount of days notification. Otherwise, it's an unreasonable request. We used to get that all the time for movies and things like that, when people would show up and want listening devices and these kind of things without heads up. We may or may not had the equipment available for them at that immediate time. So we used to say, 2 days or 3 days notification ahead of time, and then you are required to provide that accommodation.
Great. Now, along the masking line, one of the other questions of this chat box then goes to temperature taking. How many of you are taking temperatures? Are you not? Are you charting that and keeping that on file?
We're going to take temperatures at ours, and parents will know ahead of time in the handbook, what temperature sends them home. So.
Yeah, this is Sarah from Upper Gwinnett. We're doing temperatures too. We took them last year. As far as registration goes, we have the kids and parents stay in the car. They form a car line. I have actually hired a COVID guy last year, just a young kid, but he was in charge of making sure the temperature was taken and jotted down and making sure all the kids had masks. He was just kind of an extra staff member. So he helps with the temperature check. The first week was a little funky because it took a long time, but after the parents got it, we flew through the camp line. So everyone stays in their car. If their temperature is 100.3 and above, they go home. If not, they're welcome to come to camp.
100.3.
Did you ever
I was just going to ask that.
be too hot?
CDC guidelines say 100.4 and higher. But I did the same thing last year. I did everybody's temperature upon arrival, and I charted it, and I was the only one that saw it. And then we did a car line. So I would walk over, take their temperature, open the door, let the kiddos out, and then same thing at pickup. It was just a car line, and I would dismiss them as their parents arrived.
Now, how did you work that in terms of, we have a form that has designated people to pick up at the end of the day for camp?
I made placards for whoever was listed, and it had to be on their dashboard, so I knew who they were. And then if
Ooh,
it
I
was
like
someone
that.
I didn't know,
So
I
we did
checked
also
ID
this
real
year.
quick.
Okay.
They were bright. Ours were bright fluorescent green that had the camper's last name and our logo. They were laminated. And
I love that idea.
That's a great idea.
Yep.
All
I stole
right.
it from my daughter's school. I don't know where Andy got hers from, but
I think I may have actually stolen it from you last year, Mike.
We
it
did
just
launch
sped things up.
Oops, sorry, Mike. We did launch a quick poll just to get the overall feel of everyone and whether or not they're taking temperatures. So if you have a quick moment, please complete that.
Is anybody going on field trips?
No.
No.
Yes. But less of them and closer. And more outdoorsy, or renting whole facilities. Like the ice skating rink, we rent the whole facility. We're doing that. But we're not going to go to the bounce house when 4 other camps are there.
How are you managing the busing, Mike?
So I talked to Philly Transit, who I've used in the past, and they say they can take 46 kids per bus if they put 2 in a seat. Now, I haven't decided we're going to put 2 in a seat. We're essentially going to double our busing, right? Because we're not going to pack as many kids on a bus. So we're going to double our busing, which is why we're going to closer trips where we can either shuttle a bus back and forth to get the kids in there, or where we normally do 2 trips a week. We'll do 1 trip and 1 in-house special event, and that will save us the busing from the second trip so we can afford to double the busing for the first trip. We are trying to run as close to our normal camp as possible this year.
Now, does people that have camps that supply snack, did you change anything about the way you handled that?
We're
offering all prepackaged snacks as opposed to having the campers kind of prepare their own. And in instances where we want to prepare something that maybe can't come prepackaged, we're having 1 staff person kind of divide up all of the necessary supplies and put it in a Ziploc bag so that each camper gets their own package of every ingredient that they would need.
Neat. That's a good idea.
Did ours by group. So we had individual snacks, and then it was the red, green, the green group. The kids knew to go that tote, and then their counselors worked them with that. But we did hand sanitizer before they even got there, and then they got the individual snacks out of the totes to keep them separated.
Nice. Okay. Thank you.
Just to let everyone know, we have a very busy chat box today, which is fantastic, but I don't want to interrupt the great dialogue. So if you get a chance, please check out the responses in the chat box as well. There are some questions that we're going to get to, but again, since you guys are having such a good conversation, I didn't want to interrupt that. But as far as field trips, there's some great responses. As far as the food question, there's some great responses. I do want to go along the line of the field trip question. And what about bringing special visitors into camp? How are you handling that? You know, whether you're bringing in magicians or anything like that. Are you doing that this year? Do you plan on doing that? And how are you handling it?
We're bringing in a traveling miniature golf course. And we'll be breaking the kids up into groups. And in between each group playing, they're going to, sanitize the clubs and the balls and everything. So it'll be, fine for the next group to use.
Jess, you're contracting out somebody for that?
What'd you say, Mike?
You have an outside group coming in to do that?
Yes.
Can you shoot me that information?
Can you put it in the chat? Or are you local? Where are you?
Anywhere mini golf.
I'm sorry, I'm from Abington.
Oh, okay. I don't know if they travel where we are.
That's all right. I did just mention in the chat box, Jessica, for instances like yours, if you have someone who comes to your camp or your facility and you want to share it with the group, please do put it in that chat box and we'll make sure everyone gets that information.
Yeah, with special visitors, I feel better having maybe, 2 or 3 people from an outside place coming in, and we make sure that they're sanitized, temperature's taken, everything, than taking 50 kids on a bus somewhere else. Something that worked well for us last year is we had the Elmwood Park Zoo come about once or twice a week, and they do excellent presentations.
Oh, I've got Hershey Zoo.
Nikki.
America.
It's Todd. If they're going to put in their special people they're bringing in, can they at least put like their location? Since we're from all over the state, we're not looking up places that are irrelevant to us.
Absolutely, absolutely. And when we do the chat box notes, I can try to put them per district if that helps as well.
That would be great.
I can try to put like district contacts and stuff like that. So yeah, please share that information.
In regards to that, here in central Pennsylvania, our rule is 1 child per seat in a school bus. So we are going to be looking to bring people into the camp because the whole scenario of exposure. It's all about exposure. So you actually have less exposure by bringing somebody into your camp and making sure they're social distanced versus getting on a bus with all those kids less than 6 feet away, even with mask, because with mask, it's 15 minutes. So we're going to be looking for field trips that are like no more than a half an hour, where before we would take kids up to 45 minutes away, and we won't be doing that. So the other thing is opening all the windows in the bus when you're on the bus. We have a local high school team here that's required in the middle of winter. They have to open the windows to travel to a game. So for what it's worth.
All right, just going through the chat box. I did complete the poll, so I'm going to go ahead and share those results now, since I'm looking through the chat box for some other hot topics. Everyone should be able to see it. If you can't, please let me know. I know one of the questions I saw earlier in the chat box, and I believe this was Tug, was what is your swimming pool protocol for summer coming up? I know we had Aquatics Roundtable last week, but I think taking campers to the pool has its own kind of protocol. So what do you plan for taking your kids swimming this summer?
We're not swimming this summer.
I haven't fully decided, but I don't think we're going to either.
We do a water day once a week where we bring in the fire company and they spray us with the hoses, or we set up water slides, things like that, play water balloon, games that, wet, fun, get cool associated things, but the pool's out. We also happened to lose the pool we used to go to. So it was a double reason. It wasn't just COVID related.
I did that last year and it worked well. I actually told parents just to have their kids dressed every day for water play. That way, if it was a super hot day, my staff had enough resources, they could just make it happen. So,
did anybody take their kids to the pool, or is anybody taking their kids to the pool that they know of?
No, we're not.
We are.
We have a pool at our facility. We're a community center. So we have an indoor pool and our kids swim twice a day. They have swim lessons in the morning and free play in the afternoon. And we just follow CDC guidelines of wearing a mask to the pool, taking it off on the pool deck, allowing kids to go in. And we just don't max the pool to more than 40 people at a time.
How did you come up with that 40 number? You're the guy, the person I need to talk to. Did you figure out
it was CDC guidelines? Yeah, CDC guidelines with the square footage. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And that's in the pool.
Yep, understand. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And so we run a pool and we ended up having a camp come, but the campers ended up buying memberships. So they were considered, obviously part of the pool. And then we had them in our count when they came for the day. We just got a heads up of when they were coming. They usually came twice a week.
Does anybody know the ratio for square footage per kid or person, just offhand? Because I just measured a building for square footage, and I need to figure out what I do with that number.
It's on the CDC website. I don't know it off the top of my head.
I just figured I'd ask.
Indoor and outdoor percentages and ratios are on the CDC website. We just met with the county about our community day, and they pointed us in that direction.
Thank you.
We did it for every location that we have our remote learning right now, and I have that at work, and I'm not there right now. But there's a formula for inside, outside. I don't know if I put my email in the chat, you can email me, and we have it set up that you just fill in the blocks and it tells us.
What? That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
I'll put my thing in there now.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And Jane, also in the chat box, Beth Bachman had noted that they're using their occupancy number and then basing it on their county guidelines.
My one building doesn't have that figured out yet.
Okay.
It's in the inspection process for the new park and rec annex. So until I have that, I figured I better go by square footage to try and figure it out a little sooner.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, T.W. Brown.
All right. Going back through, what other hot topics do we want to hit on while I'm going back through the chat box for questions?
Nikki, I have one. Lunch procedures. Anybody want to talk to me that did it last year and what you did?
So we have our food provided through our county food program. So everything is all individually packaged, and we didn't allow any outside food unless it was documented by a physician, like for food allergies or whatever. And, you know, we washed hands, the kids were seated 6 feet apart from each other, et cetera. So that's how we worked it. They all handled their own trash and then washed hands directly following.
So did you purchase those hand washing stations so you could quickly wash kids' hands? Because passing each other in the bathroom and the sinks being side by side, like we have 160 kids to try to wash their hands. Like that's a nightmare, I'm thinking.
Well, at the very least, do hand sanitizer for a quick. You can get the big ones from like Uline or whatever, you know, that according to CDC guidelines, that qualifies. So
that makes me nervous when they're going to go eat lunch and they're putting chemicals on their hands and now they're going to eat their food. I don't know. I just,
well, then maybe you have to consider staggering your lunch times.
Yeah.
If you have that many kids.
Yeah. We bought hand washing stations. I was just wondering if anybody else did that. We didn't use them yet. Like, do you run out of water? Do they work well? Has anybody done anything like that?
I've rented hand washing stations for events before, and that works out well. That's the best answer I can tell you. You know, several hundred people at an event, up to 1,000, and it works well as long as your ratios are right with, you know, hand washing station per however many people. Kind of like figuring out potties. You know, per every 75 people, you should have a potty.
Right, right.
Tug, we rented hand washing stations too. It's Sarah from Upper Gwinnett.
Yeah.
And they're like 125 a piece, and they last. And I think we got 5 of them and just kind of staggered them out, and it worked fine. You know,
good.
But again, it's going to increase your cost a little bit.
That's all right. I appreciate you saying that. And I miss skiing.
I miss skiing too.
Doug, other things that I have been seeing across the country is since water fountains have been, you know, not being allowed to be used, people have been retrofitting water fountains with hand washing stations.
Oh,
so
awesome. Good idea. Thank you, BK.
Oh.
Awesome.
Another great question that just came in the chat box from Jennifer. What about staffing? Is anyone having staffing issues? How are you reaching out to get some staff for this summer? And what issues are you, aside from not finding staff, are you coming upon other issues with that? And Mandy McGuffey shared a link to a DIY hand station in the chat box, Tug.
We're having staffing problems early, and I think it's because we ran such a smaller version of our camp last year that, you know, I had 8 staff instead of 35 last year. So I don't have that pool that is assuming they have a job this summer coming back. So essentially it's like you're starting brand new and having to advertise and interview, and I'm not getting a ton of applicants.
I just got the go ahead that we're officially proceeding with camp, and I had to switch camp directors this year because one is going back for a master's. So I'm hoping that the kids, because every year they want to return, I'm hoping that the switch of the director doesn't cause an issue for us trying to get the same kids back. So I don't know if I have a staffing issue yet.
I'm seeing similar stuff in the chat box as well. One question from earlier in the chat box that I want to mention too is, As far as marketing and registration, I know some people have just gotten the go-ahead to run summer camp. Some people are still waiting. But for those who have the go-ahead, have you started marketing? Have you started registration? What type of marketing have you started? Are you doing mailings? Are you doing all virtual? And have you started registration, and how is it going? I know that's a lot of questions, but I just thought I'd throw them out there.
And that last
We
one in the
plan-
chat box, waivers would be in that grouping too.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question. Did people make kids or families, did you do one blanket waiver for the whole duration of camp, or did you do daily waivers for did you do any also, did you do any forms like, are you experiencing symptoms kind of thing to have kids come daily? One
Great
waiver
question.
for all of camp? Okay.
This is Jessica from Abington. We just got, everything updated by our solicitor's office. So we actually have one COVID waiver per child. And they're requiring it for every program. So say if a child signs up for, 2 or 3 different programs, well, unfortunately, they're going to have to do 2 or 3 different waivers.
Okay. And did anyone have like a daily, form about being symptomatic at all? Like how, I know like when we go into work, we have to fill out a daily,
Right.
like, have we come in contact with do we have these symptoms? Are you doing anything like that daily for the kids? Or are you just
No.
doing temperature?
We're doing that. We're doing kind of like a survey that our staff has to complete every day.
Okay.
At the curbside, when we take temperatures before the kids get out of the car, we ask them those questions.
Hi, it's Tammy from Upper Dublin. We're doing the same thing as far as screenings, but we're also sending out a pre-screen form that asks for symptoms and temperatures for the 2 weeks prior. We're doing that for all of our in-person programs now. We did it last summer, and it was, people can lie, but people were very receptive to filling it out.
Great.
I guess the idea is to really deter them from, attempting to even lie, like maybe like, oh, hey, maybe I'll be held accountable if we send the kid with COVID and we've said no to everything, so it takes away a little bit of a liability. I'm hoping that would deter them from actually sending them if they had to fill that out.
We do not track their temperatures. The forms that we send in, we do keep them on file. But when we take temperatures in the morning, we do not keep any kind of record of that. We just take their temperature and we do the carpool line like everybody else. And we just move them right in.
Digital waiver options, I like that.
Again, a question from the chat box from earlier is, what are your plans, or what did you do last year that you may adjust for this year if one of your camper comes into contact with someone who had COVID? Are you quarantining them? For how long? And to follow up with that, Jessica, great question. Then what do you do if a camper tests positive? Are you shutting down your camp? Are you quarantining maybe their pod? What is your process?
So in Cranberry, we're running a preschool pretty much normally right now. And we just had our first positive COVID case at the beginning or end of January, beginning of February. But to touch on both, whenever somebody is in contact, it's a quarantine to make sure they don't develop symptoms for the required 10 days. Now, some people are testing on day 5 and can reach day 7, but a lot of pediatricians are not really willing to test children unless they're experiencing symptoms, is what I've found. If they test positive, I had to shut down the classroom, quarantine the staff and all the students that were considered to be close contacts. It was a great time communicating with the health department and submitting spreadsheets and giving them all of the contact information for all of the close contacts. But yeah, so quarantining if they're in contact, or if somebody in their family test positive as well, even if the kid's not experiencing symptoms.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I have like a whole policy about that. If anybody, I can put my email in the chat box if somebody wants to see how we handle quarantining and stuff.
Val, if you email me, I can share it with the follow-up documents as well.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you. Oh, Kimberly, good question. If the child, oh, bear with me. The child who has contact with COVID in quarantine, she's asking, do you tell other kids or kids' parents? And Jennifer said in Northampton, they do.
We do not for a contact. So if one of our campers or staff has contact with somebody, we don't share that. If one of our campers or staff were to test, and we would hold that camper and or staff member out, they would quarantine them until they got tested and came back negative. If they tested positive, then we would let the camp know that, hey, there was a confirmed positive case at the camp.
Thank you. And Jennifer she just said the same thing, Mike, as you. They do it for if the child tested positive.
Agreed. It's similar to like pink eye or lice or.
We don't want to cause panic. And it actually happened twice last year where staff members of mine were in contact with someone who was positive, and both my staff members quarantined and ended up testing negative. So it worked out, and I was very glad that we didn't send that panic through the parents in the camp, especially a year ago when less was known and it was more of a panic-inducing situation.
So you inform all parents if someone tests positive, but otherwise you have them quarantine if they're symptomatic.
They weren't symptomatic. One of my counselors that lives with his brother was positive. So he called me and said, hey, listen, should I go into camp tomorrow? My brother tested positive. Emergency phone call with my manager and HR and everything was, no, you're not going to camp. You stay home, you quarantine, you get tested. Once you come back with a negative test, we'll let you back into camp. We'll let you work again. But until then, we kept him home. Now, if he would have tested positive, then we would have had to let my campers know, parents know, hey, this counselor that had been at camp the day before did test positive. You also have to pay him when you're keeping him home and quarantining him.
So in that case, you almost have to worry about hiring more counselors than normal, just in case you're in that situation. You can't hire up to and expect them to be there through the whole.
So we always, and I got to give credit to where credit's due. I stole this from John Walker at White Marsh. We hire for what we call support staff, substitute counselors that can't commit to the full 7-week camp program, but they are available if a staff member gets sick or wants to take a vacation day or something that I bring in.
I only had one, but I think I'm going to have to hire more because you can't rely on like a counselor in training to put them in an actual counselor spot.
No.
In terms of quarantining or notifying people, there's also that 48-hour contagious period that you have to think about.
Yep.
If they weren't there, if it's the kid tests positive but hasn't been there over the weekend, there's a 48-hour contagious period that factors into who you need to quarantine and who you need to notify as well.
I'm just happy that our go ahead.
Even with a negative test, this just happened to me last week. I got a negative test. Well, make it short, 2 people in our staff out of 5 were tested positive. We were all sent home, shut down. 2 days, we had to sit at home. Then we went and got a negative test, and then we had to stay home for 2 more days. So, and then we had to go through all the contact tracing to determine if anybody else needed to be home for another 2 days, if I would have been in contact with somebody closer than 6 feet, more than 15 minutes, with or without a mask on. So we will have a contact tracer on staff, kind of like somebody else said they had a COVID person. We're going to do that same thing. And being with remote care right now and having 80 kids a day, you're definitely right. You need to have staff ready to go to fill in, because even though we're doing it right and have only had, I think we've only had 2 exposures in camp and 2 positive cases. Because of those particular situations, we have definitely needed 2 to 3 extra staff to come in to help us out. Otherwise, we were going in to help. And there's been times my office staff has all been there and we've only had 1 in the office. So whoever's talking about having extra staff, you're going to need extra staff, because these college students, they're going to bars. They don't care. I'm sorry. And you're going to have to pay attention. You can light a fire under their rear end all you want. They're not changing. So that's another thing you need to think about. Are you paying people if they were exposed by someone in your camp and now they have to sit at home, and it's not their fault that they were exposed by one of your employees or one of your campers, and they have to go home for 2 days, then get a negative test, then come back? We've been fortunate that our school is paying those people that have been put in a bad situation, but boy, you're talking your bottom line in revenue. It's a whole different story. So
Hey, Tug.
Sorry, I went off.
No, actually, there's a question in the chat box. Can you tell everyone the size of your camp?
We have 4 camps that each have 40 to 50 kids in it normally. I have not figured out what we're going to do this year, because I still have to do the square footage of classrooms, because we used to, of course, send them all into one place when it rained. This camp is normally outside 4 days out of 5. But if it rains, we have to figure out that square footage and where we're going to send them. So I'm still coordinating with the school district where the kids are going to go and how we can do that appropriately.
I think we're all praying for a dry summer.
Yeah,
exactly.
And I'm going to follow up with that just mainly because there are questions directly related to that. With your 40 to 50 kids, would they go into smaller pods or leave them in one big group?
That is their, oh yeah, we'll put them in a 1 to 10 ratio outside, a 1 to 6 ratio if we do go into the pool area, which we haven't decided that yet either. So within each camp, there will be 4 pods of 10. And unfortunately, they're going to have to stay in those pods. We were trying to figure that out too. Like, are we going to let them in their pods for like 4 weeks? Or is that really being cruel? Because if you get a bully in one group, that ruins it for everybody. Like, you can usually mix them up, but you can't do that because that's going to screw your contract tracing all up. So if a kid gets a case, you only have to go through 9 kids versus 31 kids. So we will definitely do smaller pods.
Great. And there's a lot of other good feedback as far as pod size. There's one question I wanted to ask while we were kind of talking about staffing and counselors in training. For counselors in training, do you pay anything, and what are the ages? Kimberly mentioned that the ages they use are 13 to 15, and they used to be our ages are 13 to 15 and used to be half camp fee first year, a quarter second year, and free the third, but they're thinking of doing $100 flat fee for 2021. Kimberly, if I'm explaining this wrong, please feel free to unmute and clarify for me. But essentially, what are the ages of your CITs, and are they paying anything? Are you paying them? How are you doing that?
We don't pay ours. And typically they are kids that have aged out of the program. So that look like they have an interest, or we even go to them and say that you would make a good CIT, that we would love to consider you and see you as a CIT for potential hiring when you're old enough, which they age out. We accept only up through 6th grade. And then from that point on, and they can be CITs even if they're old enough to be hired. If we don't have the space for them and they still really want to be a part of the program, we'll take it. So, because then if a spot opens up again, then they would be considered for that position.
Just a point of clarification. I'm Kim, who asked the question. We actually charge the CITs half the camper's fee to be a CIT the first year. We don't pay them.
Okay,
so
thank you.
I don't know if anybody else charged the CITs when they age out, for them to pay to be a part of the program. And we're thinking of just charging $100 or not even charging at all.
Yeah, we don't charge. We pay attention to them as campers and then select who we want to move up. And they're usually really thrilled about that. So they're good workers, even as CITs.
Thank you.
And while we're on this topic, if anyone has CIT themes or program information they want to share, you can put it in the chat box, or I know Val, I believe her email was in the chat box earlier, or you can email me that information and we'll share it with the group.
Ones that are not campers that we've gone to, they actually go through a formal interview process, just like we would to hire them too.
Great. And yep, Val just put her email address back up there. So thank you. I know one question that I believe I saw earlier is many summer camps utilize the schools for their programs. Are any of you that utilize schools having issues with actually getting into the school for your program? Have they told you flat out no? I know Tug is one individual who utilizes schools, but are there others? Are you mainly using community centers or outdoor locations?
We have a great relationship with our school in Springfield, so our school district has allowed us to use the brand new school that they have built. So we'll be the first group in there this summer.
Fantastic.
This is Michael from Manheim Township. Normally, our playgrounds utilize our elementary schools. However, obviously, they're not allowing any outside people to come in this year. So we are, again, using our parks and pavilions as space for our playgrounds, and then limiting the number of kids that would normally have attended those playgrounds.
Okay, thank you. And then we have just a little over 15 minutes left. So my questions are not important. So what other questions do you have for the group?
I just have one quick question. So our camp usually runs for like an entire 6-week series. So you register for all 6 weeks. And we're switching up our locations and things like that. But one of my concerns is, how are people controlling, because it's summertime, right? They take vacations. So how are you, what are your ideas, or how are you controlling the summer travel if, you know, you have a camp that runs for a succession of weeks?
We actually
and are you
register
putting
by
that
week.
out there, like first thing, like this is it, and this is how you have to follow it, so that it's not coming up continuously throughout camp? Sorry to keep going there.
We register typically it's 80 kids per week, and break them off into age groups, and you pay per week. So, and then there's a discount if you pay for all 8 weeks.
So how are you guaranteeing that the week before they're coming to camp that they weren't out of state or on a,
well, that's
you know,
the pre-screening form that I'm trying to develop now. I mean, that's the best we can really do for each of them. So they need to have that into us, you know, because you might have a whole nother set of kids the following week.
Right.
That we have to do the pre-screening form for overall camp and waiver. And then I was wondering about doing the daily sheets with, like, are you symptomatic? Have you come in contact with? So, but that's a good idea to do the digital forms. Thank you for who put that in the link, because that's something that they could do and have done, and we could already have it. If we don't have theirs that day submitted, then they can either do it right there on their phone, or I don't know. This is going to be interesting, but I definitely like the drive-through idea instead of lining up, because we didn't have camp last year. So just taking as many notes as possible. Luckily, our new camp director actually works within the school system here. So I know that she'll have a lot of protocol information. I wish she could have actually come on today too, because she probably would have had good feedback. They don't allow them in camp if what? Hold on. If they travel. Oh yeah. I mean, if they go away on vacation that week, then maybe we shouldn't let them, maybe that's got to be a question on the actual form. Like if you have a planned vacation, you know, you need to not come back for 2 weeks, you know.
So Pennsylvania right now, we have a preschool program that's running. If you leave this, so and this is why it's tricky. Every state has different rules, right? So in Pennsylvania, before you return from out of state, you need to have a negative test 3 days before you return. So would you require that negative test to be presented before they come back?
I think that's a great idea.
I'm just trying to, and then I always worry, like if you're flying on an air, so you get your negative test 3 days before you get on an airplane, and then you get on an airplane and then you come to camp the next day. Like, what are your, I don't know, I don't know. I'm just, that is a concern to me, is that, you know, if you're traveling, even if you follow the guidelines, the travel home might cause concern.
It doesn't cover all kids, but the state guidelines are for kids 11 and older.
11 and
that
older.
Quarantining requirement.
Okay, so I'm just thinking of the verbiage I want to put on that. Before you return from vacation, either have like a mandatory quarantine or produce a negative test 3 days before returning to camp.
Yeah, it's tricky. And to that point, I think it's tricky because the guidelines are for children 11 and older. So my camp is from 6 to 12. That's most of my camp doesn't necessarily have to produce that negative test before they show up.
Is anybody going to write there that all of these protocols are like can change as soon as the governor changes stuff? I mean,
right.
I mean,
Like
this is changing daily.
They will change.
You should
Everything
also,
we have has a disclaimer. Can change. No notice.
whatever policy you come up with, whatever county you're in, you can run that by your county health department or your solicitor's office or your insurance carrier to make sure that your wording is correct. Because it's pretty tricky on how to word it.
So we're pretty fortunate in Mechanicsburg right now that our school district has been doing that contract tracing since, you know, we began school in September, and they are no longer following the protocol in regards to travel. That there has not been cases brought back to our school based on travel. So they just disbanded that whole travel thing. So I'm praying that's the case for me with summer vacations.
Tug, is that for the staff or the students or both?
Both. That happened like 2 weeks before Thanksgiving.
Okay.
That they
I know
did away with that.
Yeah, in Wissahickon and in Upper Dublin around us, both the teachers are not permitted to travel out of the state. They don't have the same requirements on the students, but the staff is not permitted.
Wow.
I think we're going to find both staff as well as kids. Families are going to travel. If there's less cases out there, it's inevitable. Nobody went on vacation last year. Everybody put off their vacations. I already have staff telling me that, you know, they have timeshares and whatnot that they couldn't utilize last year that they want to utilize this year. I think it's something we're all going to have to deal with. And, you know, as far as protocols and what to put into place, I mean, inevitably people are going to go away. So we're just going to have to deal with it, I guess.
And then how are you
hope
going
for
to
the
have
best.
staff?
Right, right. Yeah.
And honestly, if they go someplace like my husband and I went to Maine last year, it was the same then together to eat and pick up food or whatever. And meanwhile, people here in Pennsylvania were, you know, they'll go to their friend's house with 10, 12 people. There's more exposure right there. So
Exactly.
it's really based on intelligence.
Exactly. Yeah, you just
That's
hope for the
risky.
best.
I agree, Derek. Derek mentioned that we just have to do our best. We can't force people to tell us everything they do.
Right.
And that's all we can do. One question with specialty camps, we've been talking about the camps we run the whole time. And I say we, because I used to run camps, so I'm going to throw myself in this group. But what about specialty and contracted camps? Sports camps, science camps, robotics camps. Are you doing contracted camps? Are you running specialty camps? Is anyone doing them? And if so, what is your procedure for those? Are you doing them virtually? Are you doing them in person? Have you nixed them for yet another year?
We're doing them in person, as many as possible. We're holding outdoors, even like the science explorers and engineering for kids and those things. We're holding outdoors just so we can increase our numbers and obviously distance better. And we're requiring masks and following all the same protocols. But we honestly, we need to do the programming and the revenue.
We're doing the same. We're doing in-person camps outside as much as possible. And we are doing the same screenings that we're doing for our other camps. We're doing the pre-screen forms. We're doing the, and we're doing all of those camps now. We're doing in-person camps now with science explorers, math science,
and honestly,
pottery, all kinds of, and we're also doing virtual camps as well, so that everybody has the option to do virtual.
And Tammy, your summer camp's a big program like ours. And if I can handle 200 kids in a summer camp, I can run a 20-person science camp. You know, I mean, like the risk is much smaller. That's much more manageable.
Yeah. We are reducing those numbers as well, just to keep a closer tab on it. But yeah, I mean, absolutely, we're running them. We ran them last summer, and we're planning on running them. We are planning 2021 as we were able to do 2020, and anything that we're able to add, then we're considering that a bonus. But right now, we budgeted for 2021 to be like 2020, and we're moving forward with the plan on what we were able to do last year. And hopefully as restrictions go down and as things get better, we'll be able to add more things.
Wonderful. I'm going to just mention to anyone, if you have resources that you want to share with the group, I'll put my email in the chat box. You can email them. You can also upload them to the chat box now. So whether it's protocols, whether it's innovative ideas, which we're going to talk about next, is some of the cool ideas you've had for your camps and virtual programs that you're excited about. Because the next like 7-8 minutes, or even if we go longer today, we're just going to do some bragging because we're proud of what you do and we want you to be able to share that. But if there's stuff that you want to share with the group, I'm going to put my email address in the chat box and just shoot me an email and I'll make sure that gets out to everyone.
I would really appreciate it to kind of see the protocol stuff that people put together that held theirs last year that worked for them. And if you had a daily waiver, like about being symptomatic or not, or have you come in contact with, I would love to see what you had on that. If anybody has those to share.
Yep, and everyone who's on this roundtable, you already registered through Zoom, so I have your contact information, so you'll all get this. And if we have a ton of resources, I might just give you a link to the PRPS website, and then all the resources will be listed on that page, because sometimes if we put too many in the email, you'll never get it. It'll just get blocked as spam. So, but we'll make sure you get it. Also, is PRPS going to do, I really loved the resources you put together for like translating the state information. The supervisors kind of took that and it kind of helped justify what I was saying. So funny you should ask.
Formal like that would be really great, even if it keeps changing.
Yeah, funny you should ask. Actually, we started up our spring roundtables again last week, and from those, we all as a staff said, we need to update our resources, including that document. So the staff is working on that now. Hopefully within the next week or two, we'll get that out to everyone. It's just going to take us a little bit of time. Also, we'll be scheduling another set of roundtables. They will probably be in March, but we don't want to overload you because I know you're all going to sign up for the virtual conference, right? I'll send that link to you in the follow-up email as well. Just, I'm going to plug that because it's going to be amazing. But there's a question in the chat box. I'm just going to mention, how are you all doing first aid and CPR training with your camp staff? I'm going to touch on this. I'm an instructor, so I taught for a couple camp staffs last year. We did blended learning. So the camp staff took it online, and then I ran through skills with them. And basically we scheduled 30-minute time blocks where I could run through sets of skills, and then I left 30 minutes in between the staff. So that way I could sanitize everything, and we could take nice breaks. So the blended learning is a great option if you're going through American Red Cross, but if anyone else has feedback on that, please speak up. And then of course, you also can brag about all your cool stuff now.
So do you want to come to East Hanover and run CPR for us?
Sure.
We'll pay you and
I
give
did the
you
same
lunch.
thing as you, Nick.
You can pay me in licorice.
I'll do it.
can
You can just
pay
pay me in liquor.
Anything Hershey's and Trogs.
So we did the same thing. We do the blended learning, and then I bring them in for testing. What I do with my staff that I've always done is, if you come into the days that I'm instructing, we don't charge you. It's it's part of our training for you. If you can't make one of the 2 or 3 dates that I offer, you have to go get your certification on your own, and you have to pay for it.
I think that's a great idea.
We didn't get as far as to even getting to CPR last year, so I gotta schedule that.
Well, and a lot of times your local fire department, police department may have an instructor. You can reach out to them. They'll maybe do it for free. I did it for our local park department at no cost. 1, because I used to work there, and 2, it helps me maintain my instructor certification. Yep. So you'll definitely find people. So there's no other pertinent questions in the chat box that I see. So what other last minute questions do we have? What else do you want to touch upon? We still have a few minutes. And again, if we go a little long, not a problem.
I have a quick question.
Absolutely.
So we've been doing stuff with like our trying to get an after school program, and we have a preschool that we deal with on a year-round basis. And we noticed that on, I think it was the state of Pennsylvania's website, that they require some kind of permit or license for day camps. And it's very vague because they say outdoor, I can't remember the exact verbiage, but I'm trying to figure out, is any other day camps, whether it's preschool, teen, youth, whatever the case may be, do you have to have a permit to run camps?
There's a whole different world with when you're talking preschool. I mean, that's been kicked around the last couple of years. And if that's what you're running into, you need to become a certified daycare, that kind of thing. But just for a regular summer camp, I haven't seen any permitting needed.
And it's actually at the legislator right now. I believe we should have updates on that later this year. We do have some information on the PRPS website regarding that legislation. It should be on our advocacy page, but we've been going through that because the way the state, certain parts of the state look at us, they want to compare us to direct child care facilities. So whether it's a preschool program, a preschool summer camp, or a preschool that we run in a rec facility, they want to think that it's all the same thing, and they want to require all the standards that they would with a certified preschool. And some departments, in Val, I know you're still on, they've done that, and then other departments haven't because they can't, because there's a lot of standards to meet. So yeah, it's very tough. And some people don't have the manpower, but also some people, it would be almost impossible. And it could shut people down from running rec programs or day programs. So that is at the legislator right now. And hopefully that will move forward. I know our paid advocate has been working on that.
If that's something super expensive, that could shut us down too, because I do not have a large operating budget here.
It's not necessarily a cost to get certified. It's just a lot of work.
Okay.
And depending on your facility, that's where you would incur the cost, is to make your facility compatible with the regulations, because there are actual child care regulations. Like, you think of a kinder care or
Right.
something nationally like that, or that's a true daycare. And, you know, part-time recreation preschool falls under that according to the state.
So, quick, let me jump back in here real quick. So I actually found the state regulation. So again, I don't know if this is about what we do as summer camps or it's something completely different, but it says license requirement for resident camps. Camp owners must register camps with meet the following criteria. Camp exists for the primary purpose of providing outdoor group living experience for children, youth, and adults. Camp is established for conducting an organized program with social, recreational, and educational objectives. Camp program is held at a facility designed for the purpose of providing an outdoor living experience. And lastly, camp program is held minimum of 5 consecutive days. A permit is required to operate day camps.
Do you do weekly programs?
If you look in the chat box, Michael, you'll see resident camps or overnight camps. Is that what you run?
So that's what they mean. Okay, because I mean, it just it's very vague with their laws.
The other big thing the state cares about is the ages. Preschool, non-school age, they are really sticklers about. But when you get into school age, you can get away with it. Like we run weekly camps. So we can get away with the fact that we can say we have different kids every week. So that's why we've gotten away with not certifying our camps. But our preschool, since they're here consecutively for 9 months, they showed up and said either get certified or get shut down.
We're going through the certification process now. Courtney Meehan's been working on it. Now, she was out for a while on maternity leave, but she's been working on it for almost 2 years now. Like it's an involved process.
Now, are those full day programs though?
The preschool?
Yeah.
No, they're here for 2.5 hours a day.
Yeah, it's anything over, I think it's over 60 or 90 minutes is the requirement that
7 or more children.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we used to run a 30 kid park and tots, 3 to 5 year old camp that was a half day camp. And for the last couple of years, we've been running it with 6 kids to bypass, this law. But, we're trying to get it back to where we're at, being able to run it with larger numbers, because we're actually running it at a slight loss right now, just kind of as a placeholder, just till we hopefully get certified.
Okay.
Mike, if you ever
We
have any
talked about
questions,
doing a preschool program like that this summer too, if we were going to add that or not. But I think this is enough protocol and things to go through for our regular camp that maybe that should be put on hold till we find out more about that legislation too. So thank you.
if I can help at all, we did get certified and we just went through our first renewal. So I don't know a whole lot, but I'm learning as I go if there's anything I can help with.
Valerie, I will probably have Courtney get in touch with you next week.
Okay.
Any help we can get at this point in time along the
I
process.
understand.
Yes.
All right. Any other questions? And I'm just going to ask the majority of the group, would you want one of these again in March? Because I know planning for, yes, okay, I saw some head shaking. Not sure when it will be. It'll probably be a Wednesday. I hope that's okay because Tuesdays and Thursdays are booked, but we'll make it happen. I do hope, I'm going to put another shameless plug in, that you can join us for the PRPS virtual conference. Registration is open. If you're a member, it's $150. If you're a non-member, it's $250, but then you get to be a member of PRPS for the remainder of the year. So yep, that's my shameless plug again. But our committee put a lot of work into this and then had to go virtual at the last minute. So we have a lot of great things planned. Maybe later in the month, yes, mid to late March, absolutely. If you want to stay on and talk about any last minute things, please feel free. I'll stay on a little bit longer, but to the rest of you, thank you so much. Keep an eye out. Probably tomorrow I will send the recording and the chat box and any of the other documents that people chose to share with the group.
Thank you, Nikki, and thank you everybody that shared.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
So unrelated, the conference, I believe you probably already answered this question, that it'll also be recorded. So I would really like some of my board members to actually try to start utilizing the membership a little more and trying to convince them that it would be good to sign up. But I know that some of them have wonky work schedules, so
yeah. So we're recording all of the sessions. So the live sessions are going to be recorded and then available through June 30th. So even if they can't attend like Tuesday, March 9th, they'll be able to watch them at a later date and get CEUs for them. We'll also have a handful, not a ton, of on-demand sessions. Most of them will be able to get CEUs for that as well. A couple of them are shorter speed sessions. Those won't be eligible for CEUs just because they're under an hour, but they'll have access to those through the end of June as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. PRPS guidelines together again. Yes, hopefully, Beth, if you're still on within the next week or two, we are preparing for the virtual conference, but I know each of the staff has taken some areas of the guidelines to update those. So yes, we are working on that.
Thank you so much. I just missed that part. I was like, I think that's what you said.
It's been a lot of conversation, but yeah, we should get those out. And like we always say, if you have a state or county health department, sometimes you have to defer to those. And like you guys, the health department, I think last year we did the guidelines and we put them out. And then that same day, the health department was like, oh, by the way, we changed all of these things. And then we had to update. So that could happen, but we try to keep them updated if we can.
Awesome. Thank you for this and everything you do.
Yeah.
Thank you, Nikki.
Thank you. Kim, can anyone who is left help with how to handle camp sharing in public spaces? Playground is open to the public. That's a great question. I'm not really sure how to answer that one because I don't run camps anymore, but
we're just going to try our best to inform our kids to not interact. We're in the same boat with the pool. I'm from Dormont, so we have the Dormont pool, and give or take what time we're able to go, just let them know to do their best to minimize. Sometimes their friends are at the pool, and just let them know that this is not the year that they can do that.
Yeah, I would think too, if you can look at when you're looking at your playground, when it's least busy, maybe that's when you send your kids to the playground. I know that's easier said than done because some playgrounds are busy all the time or kids want to use it at a specific time. But maybe, trying to utilize it when it's least busy with kids all over the place.
During camp hours, we actually put out those shove in the ground signs that we actually don't allow public to come into the areas that we're at. So it's actually blocked off. Since there is another playground area across the park, it's not as big, but we make them aware of that one, that they can use that at the time in walking trails. And we'll let them know what we're using that day. So what's kind of off limits until camp hours are over. And people are usually pretty good about that.
You haven't gotten a lot of complaints saying this is our tax dollars. Okay, good.
They used to before I came, and actually it was when I first moved to this area, my kids were way smaller, and somebody told me, oh, you could probably take bikes there to teach them how to ride bikes. And then so I get there and I find out they have the whole park off limits, and that's a 60-acre park that nobody's allowed on it for camp. And so and then on top of that, I found out you couldn't use bikes on the paths there yet. So when I started working there, you could use bikes on the paths, and they chose to block off areas, which was way better received because I forgot and went back again like 3 weeks later and heard the same thing, like, hey, you can't be here. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I said, do you do this for what's the length of your camp so I don't come back here again in your hours? So I mean, I took it well, but she's like, yeah, a lot of people get nasty with us. So they were just thankful that we were being cool about it. And I wasn't working in parks at the time, but I was on our parks board. So I was trying to be receptive to that. But
great.
Yeah, they used to shut down the whole park, and I guess that did not go well. So
yeah.
But yeah.
All right. Anything else?
Do you know if camp staff got classified as essential childcare workers? Are we under 1B for vaccination?
I do not believe they have.
I think it matters if you're certified, if you're state certified.
Yeah.
Our boss told us that we're 1Bs for being government, local government, I think.
But
I don't know where he got that information at all.
But I wonder if that's full-time employees versus seasonal and part-time. Would that make a difference?
That was only addressing our full-time staff, but
That's a good question. I'll see if we can clarify that, especially when we're updating the guidelines. We were on a therapeutic recreation roundtable, and what I found was really interesting. In the state of Virginia, one of the counties, the county vaccinated their whole staff already. Didn't matter, Parks Department, anything. And I thought, wow, I need to move to Virginia.
I just
Work for
think
the
it's
county.
really great how they're so willing to throw without actually asking how we feel about it and stuff. I love how they're like, oh no, we want you to do this at like, you know, full capacity, da 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 da. And I'm like, oh, well, you know, you can show up. You want to come get sick with us? Cool. You know?
I see a couple other people. James, you have your hand raised, and Patrick, you're unmuted. So if either of you want to go ahead.
Yeah, I had a question. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Real quick, any movement on the provisional hiring?
Oh, yeah.
Not that I'm aware of. I will double check. Tim is out of the office this week, but I'll double check. I think that kind of with everything that happened with COVID last year, it may have gotten tabled, but I can double check. And if there is an update, I can include that with the follow-up. It may just be next week because Tim usually handles a lot of the more legislative stuff. So let me write that down and I'll make sure that we get that information out.
Okay,
right,
thank you.
because last year they like waived that, right, for us. So hopefully they do that again.
Yeah, I thought I saw something. What's that?
It came back. They waived it. Now it's back.
That's, I was going to say, I thought I saw something recently, but I can't remember exactly what it was, but I'll double check.
Yeah, we're operating as if we have to do all the clearances before somebody can start.
Yeah, and makes it even more difficult. James, if you wanted to go ahead.
Yeah, I had a question. I do an event at the beginning of the school year, which I don't think will happen, but we call it You've Got a Friend Day, where we invite probably like 750 kids with special needs throughout our county. And then we volunteer them with high school kids, and they kind of escort around our park, and we have like rides and bounce houses and paddle boats and petting zoos for them to go about that. Did you have anything that would maybe limit us from doing that, or is there any special restrictions that may have happened, you know, with kids with special needs that I should be aware of before I kind of send this stuff out to schools to say maybe we might have it in September, maybe not, I don't know.
There's a place near us called Hope Spring Farms. They would probably be willing to answer a lot of questions for you because they're still finding ways to run their programs, and it's an adult. It's not one for kids, it's actually for adults in those situations. Where they have different programming. Most of it right now is outdoors for them, I know, but like I know a lot of them are not able to really function and stay calm wearing masks. So like one project we did with that group was we had them help paint park benches again, like take apart the park benches and repaint and have them spread out. But they might have more insight from the state if you contact a facility that specifically works with that kind of legislation.
The one thing I would be concerned about is the amount of people coming to the event, because I know that there still are guidelines as far as how many people you can have. But aside from that, I know we had a special events roundtable earlier in the week, and the question about stuff like inflatables and petting zoos came up then. And no one's really doing them at this point, mainly because there's not a ton of clear information, but there were some resources shared on that. So if you put your email address in the chat box, I know I have it, but if you put it here, then I can write it down real quickly. Let me see what I can get out to you. Now, hopefully by the fall, things will be a lot better and, you know, our freedoms will be a little easier. But if I can find some of that information, I'll share that out to you.
Thank you very much.
Sure thing. And sorry, I'm just writing down notes.
And sorry another thing, where was Hope Springs Farms? Where is that located at? So when I do
It's Hershey. It's Hershey. Okay. They're really great. And they've been able to function through most of the pandemic, still operating. They've only had to like shut down briefly at times, I think maybe once I saw. But they do like a lot of therapeutic fun things. Like they have a farm that they like have everybody help grow things. So their clients are called growers, and they also help feed the animals. Like they have their charted responsibilities. but then they also do like craft projects and things like that. And they like to do volunteer opportunities. They usually do a lot more than they did this year. Like they stopped doing most of their field trip leaving site stuff, but they did have a small group that was willing to come to the park. They were like, oh, well, you're outside, so what do you have for us outside to do? But the resources around here would also be like the Vista School, because they have children. And there was one other one that I can't think of. But the Vista School is also probably a really good resource because they're a larger entity with kids. They work with all age groups actually. I do have a contact for that place too. My friend Lindsay actually is, I think, a director there now. So I could give you her email if you put your email in here.
Okay, thank you.
I think I have mine in here. So I'm on my phone, so I have to keep pausing when I flip it around to type. So just in case, I'm going to put my email in here if you want to. I'm going to put this in here, and then I will tell her to expect somebody to potentially email questions. All right, I just put my email in there.
Thank you very much. Got it.
All right. If there's nothing else, I think it's been a great conversation. Thank you guys, and keep an eye out for our March roundtable.